I'm Don Mooers, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. Voters will soon decide, in fact, next week, whether to lock up the Transportation Trust Fund when they vote yes or no on ballot question number 1. Ilaya Hopkins from the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce is here to comment and tell us all about ballot initiative number 1. Voters will also be asked to vote for a number of judges, including 4 circuit court judges on this ballot. Ralph Watkins of the League of Women Voters is here to tell us exactly why this is of great importance to us and why voters should care as they make their choice. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and Diane Hibino is here. She volunteers with 2 groups that are dedicated to helping victims of domestic violence. She's going to tell us about why this is an important issue, why all of us should pay attention. Technology has changed the way that we receive medical data at the present time. Chinthalapale from Sleight of Hand Technologies is here to give us his insights on what we can expect when we go to a doctor's office. He's also going to comment on some other technological breakthroughs.
Thank you.
Ilaya Hopkins, welcome back. It's always a pleasure when you're on the show.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you. And great timing because our general election is Tuesday, November 4th.
Yep.
And for those that haven't early voted, this is your chance to weigh in on some important decisions.
We talked about ballot initiative number 1.
Yes.
We've talked a little bit about this on the prior episodes of the show, but this is your issue. Tell us about what this issue is.
It's a referendum to have a constitutional amendment that monies collected for transportation projects that are dedicated to transit, roadway improvements, pedestrian safety, get used for those purposes.
So we're looking ahead. So basically now you're paying taxes through gas. You're paying some extra cents on for your gallon of gas.
Mm-hmm.
That goes into a fund. We're trying to keep politicians from exercising sleight of hand and no longer having this for road transportation. Is that
That's
correct?
right. There are some standards that have to be reached to use it, but it has been tapped into as many as 22 times over the last decade or so. And that has slowed progress on really important maintenance and improvement issues and new projects that we desperately need to keep our economy operating at its fullest potential.
There's a website I believe you're coming with, and what is that website?
It's vote for, F-O-R, MD1.com, and that represents a number of organizations that have come together to really educate the voters about the importance of this issue and encourage them to weigh in their support to vote for question 1.
What about the reasons why people wouldn't vote for that? I mean, I think that some people would like to think, well, if we have some big emergency in our state economy, maybe that shouldn't go only to transportation.
Sure, and that is the main source of concern for people who don't want to see it happen. But in fact, this constitutional amendment still allows the government to declare a state of emergency, and with a supermajority of the General Assembly, the money could be spent in other ways. But really, we hope that we'll never reach that point because there are so many projects in Montgomery County. You know, you think of the Corridor Cities Transit Way, the Watkins Mill Exchange, improvements to 270, and many of the local roads that we all drive on need those funds to keep up with the demand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's interesting because as I seem to recall with this transportation fund, is we're nearly 20% of the population in the state of Maryland. We provide most of the tax revenues in this wonderful state, and yet 50% of this trust fund goes to Baltimore City, and so we're really talking about trying to eke out just even crumbs that we haven't been able to get for these years. Isn't that correct?
We have a lot of very important projects in Montgomery County, and they are moving forward, but what we don't want to see is any of them stalled. So when the Secretary of Transportation came for his annual road show, there's a long list of projects that need the assurance of that money and those funds to make them happen so that it makes doing business and the quality of life in Montgomery County more attractive.
And I think the transportation kind of comes at the right time in my mind because having commuted the Beltway for a while, and I feel the frustration of lack of transportation options. hopeful that this fund will actually bring us more options commuting-wise, as well as using personal transportation.
Yeah, and it's been a long game for our chamber. We worked hard to establish the Blue Ribbon Commission on Transportation. Out of that came legislation to pass the gas tax. And this is sort of the third leg of the stool, where we're saying we've collected this money that's dedicated to transportation improvement. Now let's make sure it stays for that purpose and is deployed effectively.
Will we get a fourth leg of a chair where as the economic engine of the states, one of the most important economic engines of the Mid-Atlantic, that maybe we'll start getting a share of the transportation fund that will actually meet our needs? Because we're still talking about only a tiny fraction.
Well,
with
what's
this, that would be
been
able to be
great
met.
to watch is these issues of regionalism, because of course you don't stop your car at the county line, right? People are driving between counties into the district, across the river to Virginia.
It's really
So
Fairfax and Montgomery County.
there's a lot of issues about looking at these issues more regionally and linking transit systems and making sure that payment systems between something like the Purple Line and the Metro system are seamless for the rider, so that more people will have options moving around.
But just to keep a focus on the change that this would make, under current law, the money can be moved out of the Transportation Trust Fund with a simple majority in the General Assembly. If we vote yes on this amendment, the Constitution will say it takes a 3/5 vote in each house of the General Assembly to move the money.
A real emergency.
So it would be harder. Now, but in the event of of a serious recession, we think we could get a 3/5 majority out of the General Assembly. If the choice is, will the schools close or will we build highways? The General Assembly is going to vote to keep the schools open.
Well, maybe we could get some of that money from Baltimore, maybe help out rather than having to do those draconian choices. I'm hoping you guys will continue on, and good luck in your ballot measure. And,
Thank you. It's a number of organizations, and again, you can see the full list of organizations on the website.
Ralph, welcome back.
Thank you.
This is
Thank
great.
you.
Now, we've got the ballot initiatives, and this is so helpful in understanding the initiatives, because so often folks don't know. They know even less about the judges, and why, Ralph, do we vote for judges?
Well, that's a holdover from Jacksonian democracy back in the early 1800s, when Maryland went to a system of electing almost everybody. But just to explain that, you'll see two different categories of judges on your Montgomery County ballot. First of all, as you mentioned, we'll be filling 4 seats on our Court of Appeals. Our Circuit Court.
Right.
So the Circuit Court, we're going to elect 4, but there are 5 candidates running.
Just to put in perspective, the lowest level is the District Court.
Right.
And then the Circuit Court, and then our Supreme Court in the state is Court of Appeals.
Correct.
So this is the middle, this is that initial appellate body we're talking about.
But the Circuit Court actually is the main trial court. So if you have a case that's going to require a jury, you're going to be in the Circuit Court. So that's the court where we're electing 4, but you're going to see 5 names on the ballot. Then the Court of Appeals, we also are electing some judges to that, and that's very different. You'll see the judge's name and the question: should this judge be retained in office? Vote yes or no.
Okay.
And I should explain, when there's a vacancy in the Maryland courts, the process for filling it. Step 1 is the same for either one.
By the way, people can follow along with, there's a website you came with.
Yes. To read up on the judges and have an explanation of this system of what each of those courts does, vote411.org.
Okay.
That's the League of Women Voters website. Right. We post questions to each of the candidates, and you can read their answers and see if they strike you as the sort of person you'd like to have as a judge.
Good commercial break there. So let's go back to where they are.
Okay, well, our judges are selected. First of all, there's a merit selection panel. It consists of attorneys who are practitioners in that court and some people selected by the governor. That panel screens people. They make a recommendation to the governor, and the governor must pick one of the names recommended by that panel. In the case of the Circuit Court, that person the governor names goes on the court, begins serving. After they've served for at least a year, the next general election that comes up, they stand for election again. Okay. But any qualified attorney also can run against them. Whoever gets elected whether it's the sitting judge or a challenger, they will then serve a 15-year term. It's a very long term.
Mm-hmm.
That's different from our Court of Appeals, where the governor names someone, that name is then confirmed by the state senate.
Mm-hmm.
They serve for a year, and the next general election that comes around, they stand for election, and then we will see the question, should they be retained in office? Yes, no.
Okay.
If we voted no, a vacancy would occur, the governor would name someone.
And the
it
process would start over again.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Now we've got for the circuit court. Thank you for the clarification. I mean, think of the district court again. Lower threshold and more, and then in the circuit court. What are the issues? I mean, we've got 5 on there. So we have an attorney stepped forward and said, I want to come in here.
That's exactly right. And another peculiar aspect of Maryland's process is to get nominated to appear on the general election ballot that we're looking at this November. The names of all of the people running for circuit court judge appear on the Republican primary ballot and the Democratic Party ballot. And unusually, a different set of 4. 4 names finished first in the Democratic Party, but 4 names finished first in the Republican Party, but it wasn't the same 4. So we end up with 5 names, 5 candidates running for 4 seats.
Okay.
And Maryland is the only state I know of that does it this way.
We've got about a minute and a half left.
Okay.
Do you want to go through some of these names, or how would you like to talk
It
about
would
this?
be interesting for all of us, because usually, as I recall, it's only been 4 names for 4 vacancies.
Right.
So this is the unusual part this time, so it's worth it for all of us to find out who they are.
We have 50 seconds to do that in.
What are
Who's
some of
the
the
new
criteria of a good temperament of a judge that you would look for?
Well, I'd hope that they would demonstrate knowledge of trial practice, and we did ask a specific question, inviting them to say, what were their qualifications, and also, just deep knowledge of the law, because they're going to be called upon to make rulings quickly. So you want to see them talk about that. But we also asked them, what were the greatest needs of the Maryland court system. So you hope that they're addressing those, the kind of concerns that you would share as a voter.
You happy with all 5?
I think probably any of the 5 would make good judges, but that's the voters are going to have to make those. I don't want to endorse anybody.
Well, thank you for the great service that the league has continued to play in this and every other issue. We'll be right back after these messages. And we're back. Diane Hibino, welcome back.
Thank you.
It is
Thank you very
always a
much.
pleasure to see my fellow RPCV, returned Peace Corps volunteer, former country director at Peace Corps, super community activist and leader here, Diane Hibino.
Thank
We're talking
you.
about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. October. Tell us about why
It
what
is
it is and why it's
actually
important.
a national awareness month for all the advocates and the organizations that work to help stem domestic violence in our country. And it started in the 80s. It was called Unity Day. And then I think by 1987 it became a national whole month, not just a day. And here in Maryland and here in Montgomery County, we also recognize the work that all the agencies and advocates do. And in fact, I think it was Tuesday this week, our county council recognized a fairly new nonprofit organization called Court Watch for the work they do both in district court and in circuit court to make sure that victims of domestic violence are treated fairly, equally, and that by the judges. So the work for Court Watch is not necessarily supporting the victims themselves, but to make sure and monitor the judges in both of these courts.
The very judges that we're going to be voting
The
for.
ones we're about to elect.
Very important.
Let's ask, should we go back to Route and ask him how they feel about domestic violence protection? No. I'm not going to put somebody from the league one person on the
The
spot.
Court Watch also works with the chief administrative judge, so that that person is also aware that we're in the courtroom as well. And it involves the sheriffs, the bailiffs and other people as well, because I don't know if everybody knows, domestic violence is between intimate partners, and it's a pattern of coercive behavior. It could be sexual, it could be psychological, physical, or even economic. So when you find these instances and both the victim and the perpetrator go to court, you would hope and expect that they would be treated equally. There would be
Well, what are they going to court for? Is it protective orders? Is it for divorce? What are we looking at? What's
in district court is protective orders, and you can get a temporary order either by filing in court, or if it's a weekend or evening, by going to the commissioner's office on 7 Lux Road. And so you get a temporary order, restraining order, some places call it, for 7 days. And then both the person who's filed the petition and the respondent have to come to court 7 days later so that the judge can hear both sides of the story. And then if the judge finds that there was domestic violence and abuse, the victim can receive a restraining order good for 12 months.
Okay.
So that is what happens normally in our system. The victims either, as I say, can go to the sheriff's office or the courts, but there's also something fairly new here called the Family Justice Center on Jefferson Street, and they can go there to file all this so that they receive support that way.
Okay. And is it working? Does it seem to be working, our protective systems for the protective systems?
It seems to be working, but also if you look at the numbers, it's still 4,000 cases of women at the hands of this abuse in Montgomery County per year, and even worse than just in the hands. We see it all the time in the paper in our local area.
You know, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, our chamber, the Montgomery County Chamber, works closely with our public safety partners to create a safe environment where business can thrive. The police force is really on the front lines of this, I would imagine. How has your work been with them as an organization and as they've had to adapt to this growing need?
It's the police force and the sheriff's office who are out there. For example, the person who receives a restraining or protective order are told to post the piece of paper right there near their front door. So should somebody come in, like the police, to help, she can show that she's being protected. And the police over the years have done much more in community policing, where they are much more aware of what's going on in this area that I don't think was true 15 or 20, 25 years ago. And by doing this court watch, which helps with staggered exits. This is another thing that
We've got about 5 seconds on this.
We've seen where if both victim and perpetrator leave together, there's always a chance that she would be in danger. So staggered exits ensures their safety.
Okay, well, thank you, Diane, for keep working on that safety.
Thank you.
Such an important issue.
Yes, yes.
All right, we turn to another very important issue. Welcome back, or welcome.
Thank
I think
you.
this is your first time on the
Yes,
show.
this is my first time. Thanks for having me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We'll all do a little evaluation afterwards, see if you should be invited back.
Please.
We've got great confidence.
Thank you.
The standards are low. I'm here again.
Uh-oh.
We're talking about technology and the use of technology in doctors' offices in the
Yes.
medical field. Tell us
Yes.
about what your thoughts are.
Absolutely. So transformation is in the air. So it's the holiday season. We're having all these gadgets coming into the market, but they have been in the market for a while now. There is a whole big section of users or customers who have been adapting their lifestyle around these gadgets. So we are starting to see them make their way into doctor's office in terms of healthcare and the quality of healthcare that they're receiving. So the main subject here that we are looking into is something called the patient visit experience. How is your experience going to your doctor? Do you have to wait long enough?
Right.
From our recent coverage from what's happening with the VA, it's kind of evident that waiting time is becoming a big concern in the doctor's office. So there is so much technology that's out there. Not everything could be applicable, but there are various experiences that you could actually benefit.
Okay.
By
Give some examples.
so the patient visits. So there's something, you have these new facilities that are being built to adapt to the new lifestyle of the millennials. They want to be connected all the time. So you have self-guided tours helping you going about the campus. Because of the way these new campuses are being built, new hospital facilities. There's so much information that people would want to learn about all these new medical treatments that they can get. So the patient visits, starting with the patient visits, they actually get to learn more effectively.
There's a website that I think people can learn more. I think it must be your website.
Yes, it is my website. It's sleight-of-hand-tech.com. We have some information about the interactive catalogs that people are welcome to explore.
Okay.
This is a little bit of old school technology, but as I've had to go to the orthopedics with my children, my two boys, in recent months, I get a CD of the x-rays that have been taken in the office, and then I can take them to the next doctor's office. I would imagine that before too long, they'll just be emailed to me, and then I can have them there on my smartphone to show.
Yeah, so the more likely the phone or the tablet at that point of contact of service, I think. I think the important aspect here is the experience that the patient derives going to the visit. You don't want them to be frustrated because they want to wait in line. You don't want them to be lost in your campus knowing which way to go. Or you don't want to you want them to be waiting in line trying to find directions. So these are the kind of common issues patients are running into when they go to get health care.
I was just in Northern Virginia. I was told I went to visit my cousin and never been to this hospital before. I go to the volunteer at the desk and I say, this is my cousin's name. She calls, no name there. Finally, I said, well, this is the number I'd been calling. Oh, that section of the hospital is near the loading dock on the ground floor. And the volunteer actually walked me back there because she had never been there herself.
Yeah.
So maybe something you're talking about would help.
That's kind of the crux of the problem, right? You have this enormous influx of technology, and there's a lifestyle that is trying to catch up. Some of them forced, some of them by option, right? So I think in terms of infrastructure, it also raises some infrastructure questions as to how are we adapting around all these new developments? Am I technologically aware, or is the technology relevant to what I do? So at the time of patient visit, actual delivery of care, it starts from there. You have a bad experience there, you're going to have a bad experience all through the treatment. So that's a very important step.
But how does this impact? I mean, I sort of peripherally, isn't the essential part of medical care still the doctor or the healthcare provider and the patient?
Absolutely.
And so how does all of this improve that ultimate interaction?
Well, there is the doctor-patient. Ultimately, it is the doctor-patient relationship, but we have to also keep in mind in terms of the number of doctors versus the number of patients. The demand for healthcare is rising every year. There's CDC numbers to kind of prove it. So the question is, how is the doctor keeping up with this volume? Are they able to deliver the kind of quality care that they always wanted to? Is the patient getting what they want out of the rising healthcare costs? The technology becomes like a balancing medium here.
In a timely fashion, because I went to the doctor.
We have 30 seconds left in this for the whole show.
I was able to get my results by email. So it was very fast and it was very good.
I was going to say, I really hope we get medical history transportable, because sometimes when I have to give it all, it's hard for me to remember the details, but I know a lot of those details could be important to the doctor's decision to how to treat me.
And treating us is that's the final word, rather than treatment. I want to thank all of you for joining me today on the show, and I want to thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers. Please join us next week at this very same time.